I'm back with the legendary Bill Apter of Pro Wrestling Illustrated fame. And
Thank you.
Bill, I have one question. Is pro wrestling fixed?
I didn't know it was broken. And you know, that's the title of my book, and it's the story of my 50 years and still going on in the world of pro wrestling or sports entertainment.
You know, it's funny, Bill, me and you have talked, and I grew up a huge wrestling fan, and I read the magazines just like everybody else did. And I've read your book because I always wondered, even after being in the business for 15 years with WCW, how you did the rankings, how you got all the stories. So tell us a little bit about that. Just give us a sneak peek of what's in the book.
Well, when you mention the rankings, probably one of the most volatile things in my career, throughout my whole career, was doing the wrestling rankings and then dealing with the wrestlers in the dressing room saying, what do you mean I was number 3? How did that guy get to be number 2 and that guy, he can't work, he can't do this? So it was always aggravation from that. But I was the guy who called every one of the wrestling offices. He was hired to do that. He's an extra. To all the wrestling offices, I would call every one of them, all over the United States and some in Europe, and get the rankings from the promoters. And sometimes we would just, if we didn't know, we'd do it off the TV.
It's an awesome book. I certainly recommend it for all wrestling fans.
I'm going to tell you something. This is the only book. We're on, right? Live, right? Thank you. Would you like to come say hello? Thank you. That's a George South fan over there going south. But you can get the, where were we? You can get the book on, yes, we're at WrestleCon.
We're in Orlando.
No, I know, but where were we talking? I was just going to bring something up.
I was talking about what a great book it was.
Yes, and Jim Cornette has publicly said, Bill Apter is the only guy who buries no one in his book.
I read it, and that's true. Let me ask you a question. We're here at WrestleMania weekend. Tell us some of your favorite WrestleMania moments.
Oh, well, of course, the beginning of WrestleMania, when it first started off with all the celebrities, Cyndi Lauper and Mr. T and Roddy Piper and all this. It was the changeover. By the way, do you know who this is? Would you mind coming in here? You talk about the beginning of WrestleMania. This is the daughter of Afa. The Wild Samoan, Val, and she's been around since she was a little kid in this business. So I publicly want to express my love for her.
Thank you.
She knows that. So at Wild Samoan training camp, I know we're all over the place here, but WrestleMania changed the business forever. It will never be the same, and some people love it, some people hate it. I changed with the times. That's why I'm still doing it.
So Roman Reigns is your cousin?
Yes.
Oh,
and
yeah?
What do you think of Roman Reigns' chances tomorrow against The Undertaker at WrestleMania?
Well, funny story. The Undertaker was the grand love of my life when I was a kid, so it's kind of funny seeing my cousin versus my massive childhood crush. It's going to be interesting to watch.
And prediction?
I don't know. That's a tough one. Taker's got quite the history, but you know, it's like the past versus the future. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, The Undertaker this time might rest in peace.
Getting back to wrestling. Great to meet you, by the way.
You too.
My name is David.
Thank you, Val.
Great to meet you, and you're on the Hannibal TV, so check that out. Getting back to WrestleMania, some of the moments you talked about Cyndi Lauper and the celebrities. How about some memories of the Monday Night Wars? Because I was a part of that.
Well, you were a part of that, and I'm on the WWE Network on about 10 of the documentaries about that. That was the most exciting time in all of pro wrestling, sports entertainment. Oh my God, it's Sam Houston.
Sam Houston, ladies and gentlemen. David Penzer from the Hannibal TV. How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Bill, your belt. I got to tell you folks something. The belt I got from you in
I gave
Vegas.
him a cardboard belt, a WWE cardboard
Can I tell
belt.
you something, Bill? Even through the floods and everything else, on Christmas morning when I was going through a small box of my stuff, I found that belt. It was a little bit water damaged from Christmas morning, but I had thanks to give, and thank you for always believing me. And if you want, that belt is sitting over my table right now.
You're going to have to show it to Hannibal TV here.
I sure will.
I put him in the figure 4 leg lock at Cauliflower Alley.
After I brought floods to the desert.
And at Walmart, in the party department, you can get 4 cardboard WWE belts for $5, and he won one of them.
How do I win one?
You got to get out of my figure 4 leg lock.
If you want to be the man, you got to beat the man.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Sam Houston is the man.
This is Hannibal here from the Hannibal TV. And today I have a man that I've interviewed many times in short form, but this is the first time in long form and in a fan Q&A format. He is the former longtime senior editor of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, as well as many other of the Apter magazines.
Yeah.
They're known as Bill Apter, the legend himself.
Well, thank you. I am so knocked out to be invited onto your show. I'm a big fan. As you know, yes, we've done interviews together at conventions, etc. So when you mentioned about the former senior editor of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, we also did the Wrestler, Inside Wrestling. That we did so many magazines. And do you know who coined the term Apter mags?
No.
That was Dave Meltzer.
Wow.
And I used to call him because I said, Dave, I'm sitting here in the office with Peter King and Stu Sachs and Craig Peters and all these people. We all put out the magazine. He said, yeah, but you're the guy out in the field. You're the guy out on TV here. Everybody sees you. So it's the Apter mags. And I couldn't get him to. So now these days I'm honored by that. I really am. So thank you for pointing that out.
And you also were working on boxing magazines as well, as I read in your book, which you have behind you, and I have a copy of it somewhere here.
I just happen to have it here. It's Wrestling Flex. I didn't know it was broken. Yeah, we did many boxing magazines, and down here in Apter's Alley, although everything you see is wrestling, I'm going to show you my boxing wall here. You can see some of the photos that I shot. Muhammad Ali was coming at the camera going, I'm the greatest of all time. And I shot right into his mouth. And there's Tommy Hearns and Sugar Ray Leonard. And there's a shot I took of Ali down at Deer Lake. And in the very corner there, you can see me interviewing Ali. That was during the Muhammad Ali Inoki press conference in New York. That I was invited to. And yeah, I traveled with him for many times. I studied him. I like your speed. I like your style, but your pace so cheap. I won't be back for a while. You know, he was one of my all-time heroes, and he was a big wrestling fan. He really was.
Yeah, I heard that. And by the way, when you were showing around, I did get the copy just so these fans know that I am being serious. And I've actually had this since before I ever even met you.
I know you had told me that, but I have the rare copy. I have the one that was printed upside down. There's also for people who don't enjoy reading, and I'm one of them. I'm not a big reader. I can't read. When a wrestler sends me a book that's this thick, get me the audio version. So there's also the audio version. And originally, the book company was not going to have me do my own voice. They had a guy call me and said, hi, my name is Robert. I'm out in California. I'm going to be you. I said, why? Well, we need a professional broadcast. I said, wait a minute. I've been doing broadcasting since I was 12 years old on my own radio show. And well, you might pop when you say the letter P. I said, so I called the publishing company. I said, if I'm not doing my voice, my story, I'm not going for this, because I heard an audio book that they did with Dusty Rhodes, and it wasn't Dusty, and it was like, well, hi, my name's Dusty Rhodes, and it's horrible.
Yeah, I actually have that problem now too. I used to have a job where I was able to read all the time, and I was constantly buying books, and it was costing me a lot of money. But now that I am a wrestling reporter, people are constantly sending me books, but as you know, it's a 24-hour-a-day job reporting, so it's very hard to find the time. So the audio books, yes, they can be useful. A fan has tipped $5 here, John Falsetta, and he says,
where's the tip jar? I'll take you into my karaoke room for 10.
There you go.
Just pick the song, any Manilow song. There we go. Or Tom Jones.
He says you were a treasure that helped keep everyone connected to the territories. Can't think of a question, but he just wanted to let you know how he felt there.
Well, thank you, John, and I'm very flattered by your your comment. When people tell me things like that, I remember talking to a lot of my heroes when I was growing up and wanting to do nothing but say thank you. You helped my fanship along with whatever industry it was, and I really appreciate people like you who say things like that. So yeah, thank you.
Well, there's going to be too many to put them all up on the screen, but there's a
Wait
lot.
a minute. Let me get something. Hold on a minute.
Sure.
Let me see if I have this.
While you're doing that, I'll answer someone's question. Josh is asking.
I got it.
Okay, you got it. Very good.
Because that fan was so terrific. I just got a bunch of these, and I want to present him virtually with the new, if you can see this, the Apter Chat seal of approval. And let me get that in focus here. Hold on. Since I'm a camera guy, this is going to drive me crazy. Well, anyway, that last caller, you get the Apter Chat seal of approval. So thank you very much.
Someone on here was asking who your favorite wrestler was growing up. I'm pretty positive it was the Nature Boy himself, the original one, Buddy Rogers. Is that correct?
You know something, Pally? I'm glad that you mentioned that. And I'm really glad that you mentioned it today, because yesterday on January 6th, 2021, we got the sad news that Bobby Davis, who was the legendary manager of Buddy Rogers, died natural causes in his mid-80s. And I have on my cell phone, I have 3 or 4 messages of he and I playing phone tag in the past week, trying to wish each other Happy New Year, and we never got to each other. But yeah, Buddy Rogers was one. The other one was, when I was a kid, was Antonino Rocca. Rocca had his, I don't know if it was a storyline or legit, but he had his legs insured for like $100,000 by Lloyd's of London. And when my parents asked me, one time for my 13th birthday, what would you like? And I said, I want my legs insured like Rocca. They didn't do it. But yeah, Buddy Rogers and Antonino Rocca were my first 2 idols in professional wrestling.
And Buddy Rogers is one of the greatest heels of all time. I know Rene Dupree has taken some stuff from him, but in your opinion, what could some of the heels today learn from a guy like Buddy Rogers?
Well, Rogers, the only way Buddy Rogers played to the crowd, see, a lot of the heels or the bad guys, as we call rule breakers, as we call them in the magazines, a lot of them would come into the ring and then play to the crowd and then grab the mic and start talking to the opponent. Buddy didn't do anything like that. It was a different era. Buddy would come into the ring, look around at the crowd, go like this, that he's got the brains. When the bell rang, he went at it. So, yeah, there wasn't that much shtick going on. Where right now, a lot of the bad guys come in and you got 8 minutes of them or 10 minutes of them doing all sorts of things instead of wrestling. I want to, while we're on the topic of what people can do, like those guys, this Monday night on Monday Night Raw on the Legends show, they had a match between champion Drew McIntyre and Keith Lee. And that took me back to the old days, up to the Crockett days, and up to the days when, I hate to say it, the name on the marquee was pro wrestling. That was the first match I've seen in quite a while out of WWE that was a good old school pro wrestling match.
If only McIntyre could stop breaking kayfabe every single interview he does to magazines. That kind of takes it away takes the shine away from him to me, because even leading up to SummerSlam, he was breaking kayfabe in interviews that were SummerSlam. So
now, I did interviews with people, and when I'm trying to stay in storyline, they'll go off and say, well, we planned this, and I like, that's not the way I want to go. I would still love to do a show that's storyline based only, even if it's someone without a wrestler like you and I, just talking about, hey, Drew McIntyre against Keith Lee, what did you think? Well, when he put that bear hug on, and go into the whole thing like it was the sport that it was intended to be.
Yeah, I think it was Sami Zayn recently who was complimented in a magazine about a match, and he said, "Well, you have to give some of the credit to the producer, Jamie Noble." And I was just thinking, why mention that? But whatever.
Well, trained extra hard that night, the night before. Yeah.
You sure have a lot of positive comments on here.
Well, thank you.
Snubby says when he started collecting wrestling magazines, you were the guy he was collecting.
Oh, I was with Wow Magazine. You're right, Snubby. And I have to tell you that Wow Magazine, I started with them in the 3rd issue. But I have to tell you the statement that magazine made, that was the first magazine to come out that looked better than the WWF magazine. And WWF would not give us credentials or anything. They were very upset with me. I'll explain the jacket in a minute, Jofu. They were very upset that I went with them. And I remember having a meeting with them where they said, "Listen, Bill, you'll always be family to us. But if you go with those people, they're paying our talent like $10,000 to pose for them." The Rena Miro covers, the 3 collectible covers, they paid her like 10 grand for that. And the WWF couldn't stop them at that point because they were not actual quote unquote employees. So yeah, WOW changed the business. And I was so sad because I had a contract with them and it didn't last because they started running into financial issues due to some of the other titles that they put out, like a Beanie Baby magazine and a teen magazine, that I don't know if they had the actual licensing to run posters and stuff. So, yeah. So.
Now there's very few stores that even have magazine racks here in Canada. Just a few drugstores, but I remember grocery stores when I was a kid. The parents would do the grocery shopping and deposit me at the magazine stand.
Well, we did the same thing. But in answer to the question about this jacket, I think I may have seen one Sopranos episode of my life. This was given to me as a gift. If you remember Brad Armstrong, Brad's wife, Lori, worked for HBO. And on Christmas time, one time, I got a delivery in my house, and she sent me this beautiful jacket. And like I said, and check out show you the back of it. Can you see the back?
You got to bend down a little bit more.
Yeah.
Very good, The Sopranos. Yeah, I thought you were showing us your butt.
But I've like I said, if I've seen the show twice, it was a lot. So this was given to me by Brad Armstrong and his wife. So I will always cherish it.
Dustin wants to know, he wants to say he loved your magazines and what happened to the heel reporter, Eddie Elner.
No. Look him up online. Look him up on Facebook. Eddie, when he left, he became famous for something in New York. His grandmother's last wishes were to have her ashes spewed when she died over Yankee Stadium, and he got that done. It was like on the front page of every New York newspaper. But Eddie left and went out to California and opened a company called Yoga Soup, which is a yoga studio. It is your mother's old yoga. It's not like Diamond Dallas Page yoga. And due to the pandemic, he had to close it. But he is on. You can find him on Facebook. And what really bothers me is when people come over to me at the conventions, "Hey, Bill, how's Eddie Elner and Dan Shockett?" Ha, 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 ha. Like they think those two guys weren't real. Well, Eddie's still around. Dan, unfortunately, died of cancer at a very, very young age. Dan had the sarcasm and wit of MJF. That's what Dan was like. That's why we turned him into our first heel columnist because he had that MJF thing where anybody asked him anything, he had a wise guy answer for. But both Eddie Elner and Dan Shockett could have been modern day MJFs.
Ivan Santos says there was a lot of PWI sales in Puerto Rico. Did you ever travel there?
Oh, many. Amigo, I know Carlitos very well. Carlos Colon was one of my best friends back there. Yes, that was the first territory I ever got a little nervous at because somebody said that the fans there are very passionate fans. And when I got down to ringside, there I saw George Napolitano, one of my fellow photographers, great photographer. And around the ring, on each side of the ring, on all four sides, were guards with guard dogs. And one of the guards told me, he said, watch where you go, because if the fans come down here, we let the dogs go. And I was like, ugh. But yeah, I saw and photographed some of the bloodiest matches in my life there, like against Carlos Colon, against Abdullah the Butcher. And afterwards, Carlos Colon and Victor Jovica we'd all go out to the casinos and gamble a little bit with the money I didn't have and go out to a nice dinner. I loved Puerto Rico. And one of my wrestling best friends who died not long ago, Pedro Morales, I am ready for any kind of action, baby. He was from Puerto Rico, and I spent some time with him in Colibra, in his hometown. Yeah, I love Puerto Rico. Hope to go back one day.
Hopefully the business can pick up there because it's been pretty much dead since, I guess, the big hurricanes that happened a few years ago.
Yeah. It's never come back. And that was such a vital territory. And guys who went down there all loved it because they were able to spend good time in the sun. And a lot of them were allowed to bring their families, too. It was a really good office. And I want to thank Carlos Colon and Victor Jovica for always inviting me down there.
James C. says, hi, Mr. A. Do you have any more interviews with the Grand Wizard that are not yet on YouTube?
I do. I have a lot of them. I have to digitize I have hundreds of cassette tapes that I need to digitize. I might, I'm now with the VOC Nation, Voice of Choice Wrestling Nation, and we might work out a Patreon account just specifically for those interviews. But yeah, and I knew I want to rewind before I fully answer your question, because we were talking about the wrestling magazines, and I currently work for a wrestling magazine in England called Inside the Ropes. Could you bear with me for 1 second here while I get the magazine?
Of course.
Behind me here somewhere. And they, Kenny McIntosh and Dante called me a few months ago, and they told me that they were, you're all familiar with Inside the Ropes community, I'm sure, on Facebook. And Kenny McIntosh has been booking Q&As with wrestlers forever. And they told me that they want to start a print wrestling magazine, and we're now on issue number 5. And it's a great magazine. It's a wrestling magazine. And I have a column in it called the Apter Chat, but you can see it's just great qualities. Interview with Jerry the King Lawler. Yeah, so Inside the Ropes Wrestling Magazine.com. Inside the Ropes Magazine.com. Now, getting back to your story, where were we? Hannibal.
I don't even remember.
Grand Wizard.
Oh yeah, the Grand. Do you have any more?
Yes, I do, and I will. I'm going to get that library up to date eventually. And actually, can I share my screen here?
I don't know. Let's see if you can.
And will you be able to hear it? Hold on a minute. I'm gonna give you an extra treat. Let's see if I can share my screen.
If you play it, I should be able to hear it.
No, hold on a minute. Share my screen. Okay, hang on. Share.
Mel Phillips is dead, by the way, for the person asking about Mel Phillips.
What's that?
There was a fan on here asking if Mel Phillips was still alive. He's passed away for quite a while now, I think.
Did he? I didn't realize that. Anyway, can you see my screen?
I cannot.
Can't see my screen.
No.
Hold on. It says I'm sharing. No. Okay, well, hang on. So let's see. What are you seeing right now?
Just you and I think it's Bruno Sammartino.
Oh, okay. Hold on a minute. Hang on a minute. This would be something special that I haven't done before.
Somebody says you're giving us some lessons.
Classic audio. Hold on. I have a folder here of my classic audio here. And meantime, I can answer another question while I'm looking for this.
All right. Well, Michael B says, do you think Andy Kaufman's angle with Lawler was the best ever? Thanks again for your role in that. And he pledges $5.
Well, thank you very much. Now, I'm originally a New Yorker, so I have to say it as Andy Kaufman. Nobody knew until Jerry Lawler gave it away, and I'm still looking for this folder here, till Jerry Lawler gave it away that that was an angle. I introduced Andy Kaufman to Jerry Lawler, as everyone knows, and again, it's in my book. Hold on, I'm still looking here. I have 100 folders here, and I know it's here because I use this thing all the time. Videos and audios, it's probably in here. Hang on, and you cannot see my screen?
I cannot. For some reason, we can't see it. But we can probably hear it if you play it.
I'm looking. No, that's not the right folder. I have an entire folder that I go to once a week that I can't find at this point.
This is a good question. Do you have a Ribera jacket like all the Japanese wrestlers?
No, I have a.
Here's the screen, by the way, to interrupt you again. It's showing now.
That's all right. That's fine. Hold on a minute. This might take me to.
Okay, this is
Can you hear this?
Speaking here with Louis Albano. Lou, the last time we spoke to you, you said Tarzan Tyler was given a fast count.
Well, that's
in his
Lou
match with
Albano.
Morales. Has anything come up?
We can see it now.
I told you that we've protested this to the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. I felt that Tyler was given a fast count, and we still under protest. And in fact, the match is not settled yet. I still claim that Tyler is the world champion.
I've got tons of that stuff. Oh, here it is, classic audio. Hold on, I just found it. I've got Buddy Rogers in here. Here it is. Here we go. This is a special treat.
Okay, this is Bill Apter. We're at Madison Square Garden for the return match of the match between Don Leo Jonathan
Can you hear it?
and Pedro Morales for the Worldwide
Yes, sir.
Heavyweight Championship.
We can see it and hear it.
It's the Grand Wizard. How are you, Grand Wizard?
How am I always delightful, devastating, supreme, and wonderful?
Okay, fine. Now, in the last match that Morales had with Don Leo Jonathan, Jonathan was, we have to admit, overpowering Morales, and then there was a cut opened up on Don Leo Jonathan's forehead, and you state that Morales used brass knuckles to open this cut up.
Bill, you have been covering the wrestling scene for many, many years. When would Morales have enough power in those spaghetti arms of his to open a cut on Don Leo Jonathan's forehead? Number one, that little mental and physical midget Morales would have to stand on a chair to reach the head of Don Leo Jonathan. He is full grown, while you know Morales is a pygmy mentally and physically. Of course Morales used brass knuckles. They always revert to those type of tactics, and you know it.
All right. So that was a little treat there from my audio library, all exclusive stuff. So let's get back to Andy Kaufman and Jerry Lawler. So nobody knew until Jerry Lawler said that whole thing was set up, and there were parts of that I didn't even know about. Um, the one exception that I take to the whole thing is when they did the movie, that funeral and everything never happened. Andy stopped calling once he got sick. He used to call the office every couple of days just to talk wrestling with me. And the editors, Peter King and Stu Sachs and all these guys are going like, get him off the phone. We have magazines to put out. You can't stand there and just talk wrestling with them all day. And I felt so bad. I really did. But yeah, that was that was the first shot of sports entertainment was that. People think it was WrestleMania with Cyndi Lauper and all the music videos and stuff, but it was the Andy Kaufman thing. And Jerry Lawler always tells me that one time he was on a flight with Vince Jr., and Vince said that was the only thing that he wished that he had done, and he had never done it.
And Jared told me there is a little misconception that was the most successful angle in wrestling history. Although it was popular, other than the first couple of times, it wasn't always a sellout because I believe there was 5 or 6 times total.
Yeah, but the thing is, it still stands today.
Oh yeah, looking back in history, that's the most memorable thing.
I get chills to think that I had something to do with that. Really.
Well, it's about time they put you in the WWE Hall of Fame, as I think everyone on here would agree. I think you deserve it a little bit more than Drew Carey.
You see that ladder?
Yes.
See that? That is my ladder of success. I'm in 16 different Hall of Fames. So wow. we had a ladder, and I didn't know where to put my awards, so I made that my ladder of success. But no, I'd be flattered. You know, it's funny that joking around with Triple H many years ago, I said a lot of the people that follow me want to know if I'm ever going in the Hall of Fame. And he said, well, we got to find a reason to do it. And then they started calling me and putting me on the network a million times. So maybe down the road, what I would like to see is me, George Napolitano, Frank Amato. We were the 3 photographers around the ring at the Garden, and this little punk kid named Paul Heyman. For Paul Heyman to induct the 3 of us, and even if we don't say anything, if it's on the video grid with like the old timers or whatever, I think that would be really cool.
John pledges $2 here, and he says, "Was the PWI 500 your idea?"
No, I was so against it. You have no idea. We would sit every Friday. We sat around the editor's office, and we did whoever the editor was, like Peter King or Stu Sachs, headlines, and we go. So we were sitting there one time, and somebody said we should do like the Forbes 100. We should do like the Pro Wrestling Illustrated 100. And then Bob Smith, one of our editors, said, "Why don't we just do 500?" Peter King, I believe, was the editor at the time, and he said, "Fine, Bob, you can do it." And that's how it started. And Bob, who's the nicest guy in the whole world, after about 2 weeks of doing all the mini bios and everything, good morning, Bob. Oh my God. No, I did not come up with that idea, thank goodness. And I never wrote it. We would sit in a conference room for hours ranking the top 100 guys, and then Bob pretty much took over from that. And if you had any questions, he'd call on us. We were all in the same editorial pool back then. Great question.
Ibzan pledges $5 here, and he says, "Whose death in the wrestling business hurt you the most and that you still think about today?"
That's a great question too. And it's there are a lot of them, but it's a recent death. And that was, that guy over there, Mr. Wrestling #2, Johnny Walker, which is his real name. He was one of my closest friends. He and his wife, Olivia, and his 3 children, John, Robert, and Michael, became like godchildren to me. I think about him every day. And we used to laugh because we'd always go out to eat with Ronnie West, one of the referees. And I always told Johnny Walker, I said, I don't know if this is true, but I finally figured out who Mr. Wrestling #2 is. And I don't mean knowing that it's you, but all your interviews like, Tommy Rich, Friday night, you're going to the moon. I said, you were doing Jackie Gleason with the Honeymooners. Oh, you're going on the moon, Alice. It's like the same thing. He never realized that's what he was probably doing subliminally. But we talked every year during Christmas, New Year's, and during mid-year. We always called each other. And yeah, I miss him very, very, very much. And that guy back here also with the original WWF belt, Bruno and I were super close, and I miss him every day too. Yeah, great question.
This is one I wouldn't have thought of. Angel Hernandez tips $5, and he says, what is your personal opinion on why the Ultimo Dragon WWE run didn't work out as good as it could have?
Hold on a minute. Hang on a minute. You know, it's amazing how you have such intelligent viewers here, and they're like really whetting my appetite here to do this. The reason that the Ultimo Dragon didn't work, why it never went over in the WWE, I can reveal that now. It was me. That's why.
There's the mystery. They didn't want to put
me. It was me. I didn't have the body for it. No, I really don't know why. And to be honest, this is one of his original masks. All the masks you see behind me were given to me by the actual wrestlers. And he was one of my favorite wrestlers. And I don't say performers in the ring. He was one of my favorite wrestlers ever. I loved his style. And I don't know why it didn't work. I don't know why it didn't click, but the magnetism of who he was, let me get the comb over back here. The magnetism of who he was just didn't work with the type of company that is WWE.
Dennis H tips $20 here and says,
Whoa.
his favorite memory of 1986 was walking home from school and seeing the package of the mailbox of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, The Wrestler and Inside Wrestling. Thank you.
Hold it. Thank you very, very much. And I have something right in eyesight here. You know, Apter's Alley is so full of stuff here. And so many of you, you know, cherish the old magazine days. And of course I did too. And I had the original Wrestling Review. It's still in my bookcase in the back there. But this is the original PWI. And I used to love these. This was the Wrestler magazine. My buddy Pedro, and these are a lot of the magazines that I worked on through my career. There's Wow, and look at this. Look at the embossed, glowing.
I have that one. I actually have that one too.
Yeah, I mean, this was great. Then there was Inside Wrestling. We did that. The Wrestler, which I showed. Then I moved on to Italy, and some guys put out this great magazine called Tutto Wrestling. And I got 2 trips to Italy out of this thing, which was wonderful. And then in England, where I went a lot, we did Total Wrestling. And now Inside the Ropes, which I showed you. And again, look at this shot I took at Tyson. He was a big wrestling fan. And when I did a post set with him, I rented a studio in New York, and he would say, let me hear you do your Dusty Rhodes imitation. And we would go back and forth doing our wrestling imitations. Had a ball.
Well, since you mention it, let's hear your Dusty Rhodes, because I've had a few Dusty Rhodes impersonators over the past week or so. So can we get a glimpse?
I'm known for this, but now the pressure's on. You see, when Hannibal asked you, baby, if you want to be on the show, if you will, you got to think of the American Dream booging down Broadway with superstar Billy Graham and all those little black babies, white babies, Asian babies, if you will.
Very good. And And fans out there, pray for Billy Graham. And if you want to help him out, he's got a GoFundMe. He's having part of his toes amputated.
What a great person, a great worker in the ring and on interviews. That classic shot of him in Times Square where he's up on a garbage can doing this, I took that photo. He and I were walking down to Madison Square Garden, and a whole group of people were surrounding us. So he got up on that thing, took his shirt off, and did that pose shot. And after he got down, this guy comes over to me and he says, "Mr. Apter, I'm a big fan of you and superstar Billy Graham. And one day I'm going to be a wrestling promoter." And I was like, "Yeah, right. Can I walk down to the garden with you?" Sure. It turned out to be Herb Abrams.
What did you think of his documentary? I know you saw it on Dark Side of the Ring because I know over on your YouTube channel you did a breakdown of it, but could you give us
the dark side, because I knew him really well. I was around him. I helped get him started, and he never called me for it. I said, "How could you not call me for this?" Oops, my secretary was supposed to get a hold of you. Nobody ever did. But yeah, he was a wild guy, but he was a wrestling fan and a promoter, so he wanted to make it big. But he got caught up in the like the old rock and roll bands and all that. He got caught up with the wrong people and the right business, and he blew up.
Nick tips $1.99 and says, "Do you have any Portland territory stories involving Buddy Rose?"
I have, Nick. I have an audio tape of an interview that I did with him that I haven't digitized or run yet. No, I knew Buddy pretty well, mainly when he worked in the AWA. He's always just a really, really nice guy. Anytime he'd see me in the dressing room, he'd poke a finger into my non-belly belly and say, "Come on, you got to get some more into that belly like his," and then he'd go. So yeah, he was a great guy. He was a really, really nice guy.
Angel Hernandez wants to know who would win between Haku and Rodney Mack, who's the SWE Fury television champion right now.
Yeah, I know he is, and I've heard a lot about SWE recently. A lot of people. That's the one in Texas. I've heard a lot of great stuff coming out of there, and I believe my buddy Rob Moore just won an award from there. So Rodney Mack against Haku. God, that'd be two of the toughest people I've ever. I'm going to go with Haku. I'm going to pick Haku, and not. If you ask me 10 minutes from right now, I might tell you Rodney Mack. They're both equally as tough, but I think Haku's got a little more of that killer instinct in him than Rodney Mack.
I think Haku's more likely to rip your eye out or bite your nose off in a fight, where Rodney Mack might obey the rules a little bit more. But I've never seen Rodney Mack in action. I've been around them both, and they both have an aura about them.
Tough guy. And if he can't beat you, his Jazz will come and beat you. So that's it.
Yeah, I might be more afraid of Jazz, actually. She's a tough customer, and she's in charge of the SWE Fury women's division, and she's doing a great job. They have Eddie Guerrero's daughter now, Lacey Von Erich. Christy James is the champion, Miranda Gordy. Melina's coming into their February 27th event. So
that's
lots of great things happening.
That's great. And I believe my buddy Furman Perez has been talking.
He's on here. Furman has a few questions. Maybe we'll get.
Yeah, Furman, I didn't forget you. So,
Mr. Slats says, "Did you ever interview or photograph the British Bulldogs?"
I met Tom Billington once when I was in England. Davey Boy Smith and I shot photos of him many times, but I never got to shoot them as a team because back then the WWF banned the wrestling magazines from doing anything because they had their own magazine. So I would see both of them at the hotel, but I did become very good friends with Davey Boy and his side of the family.
What's your prediction before I ask Phil's question on where Harry's going to end up? He's one of the hottest free agents, probably the hottest free agent in wrestling right now.
Yeah, why haven't they just scooped him up? I mean, AEW, he's in that age demographic too. I mean, bring him in.
I know WWE has been filming stuff with him, and he is supposed to induct Davey Boy Smith into the Hall of Fame, but I do know he hasn't signed reportedly anywhere.
Well, that would be a great place for him because of the history of that family.
Phil says he tips $5. He says, "Thanks, Bill. Your mags made me a reader/writer.
Thank you.
Love Dan Shockett on David Von Erich passing. Great spoiler article. Very informative. God bless."
Well, thank you, Phil. And that was one of the low points of my career. When David died, I was at the funeral. I was like a member of the Von Erich family. And Dan had written this. Dan was our bad guy reporter, and he wrote a story how David, Kerry, and Kevin reminded him of the Three Stooges. That story came out, and again, this is a chapter in my book, came out 2 days after David died. And Fritz Von Erich didn't understand what we were doing in the magazine, that Danny was a bad guy. So Gary Hart called me, and he said, "My man, Fritz doesn't want you down at the Parade of Champions. You show up, he's gonna beat the crap out of you." I tried to call, nobody would talk to me, so I went, and everybody's looking at me backstage like, how do I have the nerve to be there? And then I look down the hallway, and here comes Fritz with Mike, Kerry, and Kevin, and I'm practically shaking in my shoes. And Fritz puts his big claw hand on me and goes, "I forgive you, son." And I was like, the heat was off. And I found out that his wife, Doris, was told by Gary Hart what went on, and she's the one who got the heat off me.
Lucky for you. That claw would have been the end of you.
Would have been.
Chrisma32 says, "Do you have any stories about the original Sheik?" One of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, I mean, he was amazing because he never broke character. He would be in a telephone. Stanley Weston, who started me in the magazine business, used to tell me that Sheik would only call him from a telephone booth because he didn't want people to know that he spoke English. But I never forgot my first wife on our honeymoon. First wife, I've only 2 times. We were in Toronto, and it was a Sunday night. I said, "Come on, I just want to go see my other family here." "All right, you're going to take me to wrestling, right?" So we go back into the office, and they let us go backstage, and there was the original Sheik and Abdullah Farouk, the Grand Wizard, Ernie Roth. And he says, "You married this piece of garbage when you could have talked to the Sheik." This is what Ernie said. Sheik looks at my now ex-wife, looks at her, goes, "Salama, bun, balada," grabs her hand, kisses it, and walks away, very classy. So yeah, he was great. He always stayed in character. People never knew that he could speak English.
And he was one of the top draws of all time. Surprise, surprise.
Scary. He was one of the scariest bad guys of all time. And people were always afraid that he was going to throw fire at their favorite wrestler.
Michael B tips $5. He said, "What did you think when WWF started their own magazine? Did they do it for money only?"
No. I was originally offered the job as the editor of that magazine, and because I was loyal to Stanley Weston, my boss, I turned it down actually twice. And it was nothing personal, and they knew this. No, what they wanted to do, what Vince wanted to do, is lock up everything in that industry to be part of his company, not outside wrestling magazines, not outside this to do with. Right, he wanted to do his own product where he could control the editorial as well, because he couldn't control what we did. But there were never any hard feelings.
Mark tips $5. He says, "The Junkyard Dog was real famous without being WWF champion, if he was champion, do you think he would have been more famous than Hulk Hogan?
No, Junkyard Dog was great. He was fabulous. But Hulk Hogan was a once in an for ages type of person. He had the look. He had the personality. He didn't need a lot of ring skills. He just needed to be an attraction. And I don't think, as much as I loved Junkyard Dog and everybody else that was in that wave of sports entertainment at the beginning, I don't think anybody would have been suitable to be the replacement for Hulk Hogan. We just did this on the Wrestling with History podcast on VOCNation.com, that if Hogan wasn't around, who would have the guy have been? And I said the only other guy I could have thought of at that point that could get close would have been Randy Savage.
Interesting. What territory do you wish you could have photographed but didn't?
The WWF. They didn't let us in. We had to send people with long lenses to shoot the matches back then because they had their own magazine. Other than that, I pretty much shot almost every territory, except I never got up to Portland. I never got up there.
What about Stampede Wrestling?
Actually, that's the other place I was just going to say. I never got to Stampede either. Yeah.
Too cold for you.
Well, no, had nothing to do with it. The publisher was like, we have a photographer in that area, Bob Leonard. So why spend the money to send Bill when Bob Leonard's up there already?
I was actually friends with him. He passed away, unfortunately. It's too bad.
Great guy.
Richie wants to know if you ever partied with Ric Flair and the Horsemen.
All the time. Where do you think Wonderful Willie gets his party talk from? No, I went out with Flair and the Horsemen many times. And I was on an airplane one time with Ric Flair when he came on with his Ric Flair robe, and he opened it up and he had nothing underneath. But no, I went to a lot of classy restaurants with those guys and ran with them in different, but even though I don't drink, I ran with them in different bars and hotels. It's a great era to be. One of the things I remember being at one of the WWE Hall of Fames, and Ric Flair, when he and Triple H were no, actually it was the anniversary of Monday Night Raw. I forgot which anniversary it was, but it was in a club in New York, and I remember Triple H talking to Ric Flair and looking at him and saying, "Man, I wish I could have been around to run with you guys." And I said, "Man, I got to do it." So yeah, it was a great era, and I had a lot of fun with them. I really did.
Alexander says, "What's your favorite wrestling photograph of all time?"
That's a great question. If it's something that I took and I don't have a copy of it here, it was an ECW, I think Barely Legal pay-per-view of Taz suplexing, I believe it was Sabu, and Taz's back was toward me, and as he went into the suplex, I just got that peak action shot of the suplex where you could see both of them perfectly. That was probably the most memorable one I could think of.
Dave mentions Dirty Dick Slater always being one of the unassuming tough guys.
Oh, yeah, Dick Slater, Dirty Dick Slater. I have an audio interview with him too. It might be on OneWrestlingVideo.com. But every time I saw him, there were two guys that always reminded me of Terry Funk's style. He and a guy named Davey O'Hannon. They all kind of like borrowed from the Terry Funk arsenal. They both had that Terry Funk fire and that whole air about Terry Funk. So yeah, no, Dick Slater was terrific. It's a shame that in his later life he got into a lot of trouble and all that. But as a wrestling competitor, he was terrific. He really was.
Ibzan tips $5.
Before you go on, I just want to compliment the Hannibal viewers for such intelligent and really great questions. You people are fabulous.
Well, there's a lot of them. I'm only reading about 5% of them. There's many I'm going over, and no offense to you guys. It's hard to do the interviews, and and pick out questions at the same time. But the people that are tipping, I'm trying to get to, as well as the channel members. Ibzan says, when was the first time you heard about the gorilla position being called that, and any memories of Gorilla Monsoon?
Oh, yeah. When I first met Gorilla Monsoon, I was shocked at what an intelligent human being he was, and not this guy from Manchuria who spoke no English, and Wild Red Berry had to interpret for him. So after I was backstage for some of the WWF shows, of course, with no camera. They did allow me backstage even during the magazine ban. I was allowed to go back as long as I didn't have cameras or anything, and I always respected that because I was part of the family and still am. But Gorilla was all. I've got a lot of classic audio interviews with him, but I always thought the match that made him was the 1 hour and maybe 15-minute draw with Bruno Sammartino. That was incredible. Yeah, he was a bad guy that you were scared of when you saw him.
Here is a good question from Dusan Mandic. Have you heard anything about Perry Saturn's whereabouts?
I've got his phone number. I interviewed him 2 years ago in New England, near where he lives, at the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. I haven't talked to him in about a year. I'm going to give him a call probably in another week or two and see if I can do an after chat and put that up for everybody to see.
Stevie,
that's where the FE is. All right.
Stevie Small says, do you think Macho Man was really negotiating to have a WWE return in 1996?
I'm not really sure. I never, I mentioned this on VOC Nation the other night on the podcast, is Macho Man was, you never knew which Macho Man you were going to get. Sometimes I'd go backstage, hey, Bill Apter, how you doing, man? And the next day I'd see him in another town. Hey, get the hell away from me, man. So I don't know what his business dealings were with them because he never wanted to discuss that. That was none of your business, man. So I'm not really sure.
This is a great question from one of my members here, Matt R. How many events did you photograph when there was crowd riots?
Oh, my God. I always thought I was going to die going under the ring at Madison Square Garden. The only riot I was ever in was at a boxing show at the Felt Forum, the small place at Madison Square Garden where the fans didn't like a boxing decision. They started burning the seats. I ran for my life. The other time, though, only other time I could think of was in Japan when Bruiser Brody and Stan Hansen would come out, and I didn't know this until after the first night. They were coming out swinging chains, and all the Japanese people rioted. They were running all over the place. They didn't want to get hit by the chains, and I got shoved under the ring. I thought I was going to get killed that night. But no, I didn't have a lot of those incidents. Worse than riots, when we were at ringside at the Garden and a wrestler would kick another wrestler out of the ring, they always were kicked out on the side of the photographers. I had 2 or 3 cameras broken during my career because of that. It was almost like, where's Apter? Where's Napolitano? Where's Heyman? Where's Amato? Yeah.
2 similar questions here. Mike wants to know the biggest in-person pop you've heard, and Chris wants to know a very similar question, loudest arena you've experienced.
The biggest pop was I was in the audience, again, because I couldn't shoot, was when Hogan beat the Iron Sheik. Yeah, that's what it would have been.
And as far as arenas, of all the ones you attended, which one would have been the loudest on a regular basis?
The Garden. The Garden. There was nothing like the Garden back in the day. And I was to every arena, every territory and all that. But the Garden, as Vince McMahon used to say, it's the Garden. It's because it's the Garden. Yeah, there was some special magic that brought the fans into another world in that building. Not that they didn't in every building that people wrestled in, but in answer to that question, if I just have a choice of one, it would have been Madison Square Garden.
how would you compare the Von Erichs pops? Because I've heard, as far as screaming women, the only one that could possibly rival them would have been Tommy Rich in his peak.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Tommy Rich was huge when I used to cover the matches at the Omni, and when the Von Erichs were in Reunion Arena, it was a huge pop too. I mean, yeah. I mean, the ladies loved, the girls loved them. That's why I used to like to ride with them.
There's a fan on here. Several fans have asked about Ox Baker. Could you share any Ox Baker memories? And someone earlier asked why his WWE run was short, in your opinion.
I don't know why his WWE run was short. I barely even remember it. But Ox, for a guy that was so scary and carrying around the moniker of the guy who killed somebody in the ring, he was one of the sweetest pussycats I've ever met. If you go to onewrestlingvideo.com and you check on the search engine Ox Baker, I did an interview with him and Lanny Poffo talking about Randy Poffo, Randy Savage, and just a sweetheart. What a gentle guy. And people always bring up that, oh yes, he was in the movie Escape from New York, and he was.
Luis wants to know which wrestler you interacted with in real life was most like their character.
Wow. That's a fabulous question. Let me go through most like their character. I've got to really think about that one, because actually Road Warrior Hawk was always Hawk, in the ring or outside of the ring. He was fun-loving, and but sometimes there was a blurred line between when I was having dinner with him and he'd go like, "Oh, we're going to beat those guys tonight, man." You know, this type of thing. Yeah, he's one of them. It's a great question. I really need to give that one even more thought.
I am interviewing Tommy Rich this month, I believe, so I'll ask him myself. But Alan Kesselman, a member here, wants to know your opinion on why Tommy lost his big push in the 80s.
Oh, I don't. You know what? I want to know that Tommy was one of the biggest sellers on the magazines, and not because the girls loved him. When he turned bad, we did a full face photo that I took, and the headline was "Tommy Rich, the fans can go to hell." And then he went on TV with the magazine. He says, "Hey, that's right. You all can go to hell." I thought they were going to make $1 zillion. From what I understand, there were political factions in wrestling. Yeah, really. Running the office that really did not want him to keep that belt. They wanted Harley Race back with the belt again.
Speaking of Harley, as we wind it down here, do you have any Harley Race stories? He's very popular on this channel.
Oh, God, I knew Harley forever. Harley, we were in Japan, and for the first time ever, I was going to go, and my publisher would always say, "Don't you ever go in a small plane with wrestlers." And Harley Race, I was going to go in a small plane with Harley, Haku, and Ted DiBiase. And it never happened, because Harley came over to me and he says, "You know something? On these particular planes, when those little lightning bolts hit you, the frickin' plane goes up and down, and even the frickin' pilot gets sick to his stomach. So if you think you can take that, you can come with us. If not, get your ass off this plane." And I got off the plane.
Last fan question here from a good friend of the channel. Jefferson E. White says, which wrestler scared you the most?
Oh, so as I was working around the ring, it was no questions, Abdullah the Butcher. Abdullah would attack me and the other photographers on a regular basis. He was terrifying. He was the first time I was ever attacked was in Detroit at Cobo. Wild Bull Curry had lost a match to the original Sheik, and he grabbed me and pulled me in the ring, and people thought this was planned. It wasn't. Whatever hair I had back then, he pulled it all out. And then Tony Marino, another wrestler, came to my rescue. I didn't know anything about it. But yeah, anytime I was around the ring, with Abdullah wrestling, I was scared out of my mind.
Yes, I've heard numerous people say, and I've seen him do it to a reporter in the 2000s, and he's lucky he didn't get arrested for it, but he would just simply blade people without even asking them. And in those days, luckily, he didn't get sued.
No, and he used to always like to talk the way he would run the office in Atlanta with me. See, here's a little box. We take this wrestler over here, Tommy Rich. We put Abdullah over here, and then he'd describe what he'd want to do. And back then, I was smart to the business, but not someone I thought somebody would talk to like that.
And where can people subscribe to your YouTube channel and read your magazine if you want?
Yeah, okay. Thank you for. My Twitter is at Apter, APTER. There's no N in it. Dusty Rhodes used to call me Willie Apner, and people still call me Apner. It's Apter One, the number one, Apter One Wrestling. YouTube is OneWrestlingVideo.com. My book, and I got to ask you this question, Hannibal: is wrestling fixed?
I didn't know it was broken.
Thank you. That's still on sale 5 years later, and a lot of people are just realizing, and it's all short stories.
And I'd recommend it too, if you're a wrestling fan.
It's Uncle Bill telling stories. And the magazine is Inside the Ropes. Go to InsideTheRopesMagazine.com, and please start following me on www.vocnation.com. A lot of great podcasts on there. And I do a weekly show called Wrestling with History with broadcaster Bruce Wirt and the legendary Ken Resnick. Yes, that Ken Resnick from AWA.
Yeah, and he was in WWE for a cup of coffee. I don't know why that didn't work out. I'll have to ask him sometime. But I really appreciate that.
I had a ball. You have great viewers, really.
Oh, and I've only put up a small percentage of the comments. Other than a few pranksters in there, you've had a ton of compliments on there tonight. And I think we're going to have you back because I only got through a fraction of the question. So hopefully we can
Wait a minute. Let's do this old school. You want to do that? We got to renegotiate the contract, get the lawyers in here, and we'll get it signed. And then put me through a table.
Oh, I don't know. I'm retired. I wouldn't put you through a table.
No.
Plus, you know the figure 4.
Well, I can put that on anyone in 6 seconds. I can still do that. And thanks for everybody for all your comments and everything. And I really, really appreciate it. And can I do my sign off?
You can. Could you sing a little bit before you sign off? Because
I would have taken you into my singing room. I have a whole room in there.
Well, next time for that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we're gonna. What would you like to hear? You want me to rap a little Barry Manilow?
That would be good.
Yo, the Copacabana, the hottest spot north of Havana. Her name was Lola. She was a show. That's it. We'll do the next time. Come on. I will bring you into another area of Apter's Alley where I have my singing machine, and we can do some tunes. You people can actually. I know the entire catalog of Manilow, Andy Williams, Tom Jones, Harry Belafonte, Kenny Chesney, Tracy Lawrence, Neil McCoy.
What about the West Texas Rednecks?
Tim McGraw, yeah. Thank you, Rich Smith. And if that's the Rich Smith that I know it is, thank you, Rich Smith.
Yeah, lots of people cheering you on, but we'll let you sign out while you're hot. I really appreciate it.
We'll do this. And next time I'll share some more classic audio interviews as well.
That would be wonderful. Nice to hear from Lou Albano again.
For Hannibal and me, Bill Apter, we will see you at the matches eventually.
Back on the Hannibal TV with the legendary, and I mean that with all due respect, Bill Apter, the Dean of Journalists and Professional Wrestling.
Wait a minute, you said the Dean, and I do, for you not younger fans, you remember Jerry Lewis?
Yes.
So I'm not really the Dean, I'm really the Jerry. I had to do that.
Yeah, I know you like to. You do impressions way better than I can. So tell us what you're up to now. I know you have a podcast. Tell us about that.
Have a podcast. I'm appearing at several conventions. In June, I'm going to be inducted into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And that's about the 14th or 15th local Hall of Fame that I've been inducted in. And I'm so thrilled that the people behind all these shows think that I'm worthy enough. Today at WrestleCon, there were people from Bangladesh, from Singapore, from Japan, from Ohio. From all over the world. Coming over to me, and they all knew me from all over the world. So I'm flattered by the fan attention. So I'm doing the conventions. I'm currently doing the Apter Chat podcast. I'm still in charge of OneWrestling.com. And a new project coming out, which will be in mid-April, is I'm doing a show on Roku. No Joku, it's Roku. And it's going to be the Bill Apter Show. And you can go to Jarrett Parsons Wrestling, the Jarrett being Jerry Jarrett, Jarrett Parsons Wrestling on Roku, and you can check out my show.
Best of luck with that. Congratulations on the Hall of Fame nominations. You're one of the classiest guys in a business that sometimes isn't. But
you are too, David.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And looking forward to watching the Apter show.
Yes.
Where can they find you on social media?
Oh, at Apter One Wrestling. It's the number one, not the word. Apter One Wrestling on Twitter. And I'm on Facebook, Bill Apter, or you can email me at bapter@onewrestling.com.
The legendary Bill Apter.
You know
Pleasure to have you.
To say now?
What's that?
We'll see you at the matches.
Yes, sir.
We're at Legends of the Ring Fan Fest with legendary photographer and author of Is Wrestling Fixed? I Didn't Know It Was Broken, Bill Apter.
It is great to be back here on Hannibal TV.
And sorry for stealing your line there.
That's all right. You didn't steal it at all. But I want to thank everybody out there in Hannibal Land for getting my book, Is Wrestling Fixed? I Didn't Know It Was Broken, and for your fanship through the years.
And I actually read the book after the first interview that you did with us, and I found out about the book, and it's a very interesting read. And I was surprised to learn that a lot of wrestlers actually didn't want to get photographed by you, and you had problems tracking them down and so forth.
Oh, one of the worst cases, yet one of my dearest friends in the whole business, was Ric Flair. Anytime I'd ask him to pose backstage, he'd say, "Sir, I'll be right back." He'd be in his suit. He'd go in to change, and I never saw him again. And then right before he was going out in the ring, he just says, "Billy," call me Billy, "do it in the ring." And then he'd stand in the ring for all us photographers and all his glory and pose there. He was bad with that. Ole and Gene Anderson, when I used to ask to pose them, they'd say, Ole would say, "All right, here we are. You got your camera there. Count to three. When you count to three, we'll pose for you." I'd count. They'd be there. I'd be there with the camera. I'd go 1, 2, 3, get ready to take the shot. They would turn around and walk away. So yeah, that's not in the book.
What about Superstar Billy Graham? He's done a lot of interviews with us.
Superstar Billy Graham was a pleasure. Anytime I needed to post him, all those magazine covers of him with the red background and the belt, those were taken by me. He was one of the most cooperative people in the universe. No matter what I needed from him, whether it was pictures, talk, or just to go out and talk with a friend, he was always there.
And he actually has a GoFundMe going now for anyone watching this. He needs a hip operation. He's in a lot of pain right now. But is there any Superstar Billy Graham matches that stand out to you from your time as a photographer?
The series of matches of he against Bruno Sammartino, of course, were just incredible. Those were the finest Superstar Graham moments I had ever seen, was his matches against Bruno.
Now, you also...
By the way, he was way ahead of his time. Superstar Graham was... Had he been kept around as champion, they would have made $1 zillion with him. That's my personal opinion.
Now, for Nature Boy Buddy Roberts, or Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, sorry. You write about him quite a lot in your book, the time you spent with him. I'm a big fan of his. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your relationship with Buddy Rogers?
Well, when I was growing up, I wanted to be Buddy Rogers. So if you could take a long shot, I used to walk around my neighborhood going like this. Because Buddy would be on an interview and you go, you know something, these guys might have the body, they might have the skills, but they don't have it up here, brother. And I would do that in my neighborhood. There were guys in my neighborhood who bullied me, and they'd beat me up, and I'd get up, do this, and walk away with the strut. When I finally got to meet Buddy, as when I was in the business, it was one of the most heartwarming moments of my life, and he said his life too, because he knew who I was, and that totally flattered me. Yeah, he was very passionate about not exposing the business, and there's a big story in my book that I don't want to give away about one night when I never saw that Buddy Rogers ever emerge from that person.
But basically, for someone that read the book, the heel character kind of came out in real life.
Well, the heel character that he was, yes, it emoted from him as part of his real being.
What was the whole story of him when he was, I think, in his 70s? He knocked somebody out in a restaurant or something like that?
Well, no, that's in my book. He didn't. Some guy challenged him to a fight because he told him that wrestling was fake, and Buddy was ready to get up and knock this guy out. But again, that's that story of Buddy Rogers in my book.
Yeah. And as far as the other Nature Boy, Ric Flair, who do you think is the better of the two?
Oh, you can't compare them. They're two different eras. They did wrestle each other. I was the only photographer around the ring to shoot that match. Two different wrestlers. The only style that was similar was the strut. Buddy Rogers never went, woo! And Ric Flair never went like this with the brains. They were two different wrestlers. In their eras, they were the finest.
What were your experiences like shooting The Ultimate Warrior?
I didn't shoot a lot of pictures of him because back in those days, the wrestling magazines were banned from shooting at WWF. They had their own wrestling magazine. So I didn't shoot a lot of them, but whenever I met him, he was generally a very pensive person who wanted to think before he would pose for a picture or do anything that I requested. He was a very interesting man, very deep thinker.
And speaking of photographers being banned, I read the story in your book about Hogan doing you a favor after he won the title.
Yeah, we were, again, the magazines were banned, and Hogan and I spoke after he won the title, and he invited me up to his hotel room and posed for me with the belt. And that was something he probably wasn't, it was not in Vince McMahon Jr.'s good graces, but Hogan appreciated all the days that he was in the magazines and got help from the magazines, and that was the return ticket. But he and I were always good friends. He gave me the headband. I have it in Apter's Alley at my home. He gave me the headband that he wore that night when he defeated the Iron Sheik.
Do you expect that he'll eventually be back in the Hall of Fame?
Oh, he has to be back in the WWE. He's got to be. What happened, of course, was very bad and very unfortunate, but I think, as they say, time heals all wounds, and he has lived up to apologizing as much as he can for what happened. So, yeah, he needs to be brought back in some capacity to the WWE.
Did you have a lot of experiences with Bruiser Brody over the years?
Oh, mainly in Japan, somewhat in Texas, but I went on 2 tours of Japan with him, and not the same guy who was in the ring. He was a pussycat, he was a sweetheart, but he was very passionate about the business. When he went out there, to wrestle and to kick butt, you got 1,000% from him.
Now, what do you think the future is for wrestling photographers now that magazines are kind of drying up, not just in wrestling, but in all genres?
Well, if you can get permission to get around the ring, that's great. If you can't, bring a camera to the matches, take pictures, send them to the websites. I always look at them at onewrestling.com or put them up as a slideshow on a YouTube channel. Do it that way. If you're going to sell them, realistically, you need permission from whatever federation you're shooting at if you're making money off their product. But get their permission. It's not that difficult.
Any advice for pro wrestlers about posing for promo shots and posing while you're in the ring?
Oh yeah, I mean, if it's drawing either respect or heat from the people that are watching you, keep it up.
Now, you obviously work for OneWrestling.com. I don't know if you own it now.
No, I never owned magazines, and I never owned OneWrestling.com.
Right. Everyone thought they were yours, but you actually worked for somebody.
I'm going to give a scoop to Hannibal TV here. The most important thing I did at the magazines was not any picture I took. It was not any column I wrote. The most important thing that I did at the magazines was I was able to become part of the wrestling business. The guys trusted me to be their source. And I had a Rolodex of phone numbers of everyone in the business, and I still have that Rolodex. I was able to call anyone and get anything I needed for the magazines that was the internet before the internet, actually. But that was the most important thing I did for the magazine company, is I became the liaison between the magazines and the people in the business.
Now, you have a YouTube channel, of course. It's the OneWrestling.com.
OneWrestlingVideo.com.
And you write for that website. It's a wrestling news website.
And I also write, the only magazine currently that I write for is a British magazine called Total Wrestling Magazine.
Would you say wrestling might be the hottest right now in Britain or with Mexico?
It's hot everywhere.
Yeah.
If you look at the numbers, I hate when people say, hey, did you hear that WWE's losing money? Yeah, instead of 3 zillion, they only made 2.5 zillion. So look at the figures before you say stuff like that.
And I know you...
And by the way, the independent scene, hotter than ever. If you're watching this before Labor Day weekend in September 2018, I'm all in. For Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks to finance their own promotion and have it sell out in less than 30 minutes is insane. And I'm going to be part of that event. I'm going to be on at StarCast at several of the wrestling panels, and I can't wait to see you there.
And we're actually going to have Cody Rhodes in our company, Great North Wrestling, in the near future. I was really impressed with that sellout too. But do you want to talk about Bruno Sammartino a little bit to wind things down here?
I will for a moment, but before that, I want to say to Cody Rhodes, he's telling everyone this is not about his father, and it's not. It's about him and the Young Bucks and the great things they're doing. But if his father could vocalize seeing this, he would say, "My baby, Cody Rhodes, if you will, I'm so proud of him." I had to get that in. Bruno Sammartino was, how can I explain this? A lot of fans said about my relationship with Bruno Sammartino that it was similar to Howard Cosell and Muhammad Ali. I chronicled Bruno Sammartino's career from the early 70s and further, even after he quit. He was a dear friend. He was someone who, if I needed anything, would always talk to me, and I miss speaking with him, and I miss him very much. There was, when you say someone's a one of a kind, no one on earth will ever be what Bruno Sammartino was as a person or a professional.
And what about The Rock? I know you were close with him. There's a lot of stories about him in your book.
What's your name, by the way? It doesn't matter what your damn name is. I've known The Rock since I used to travel, with his dad, Rocky Johnson, and I knew his mom, Apter Johnson, very, very well. And many times I was at their house, and little Rock, maybe 10 or 12 years old, and I would stand in front of the mirror and do our wrestling imitations. We would do Jimmy Snuka, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, and I loved my time with Rock when he was a little kid. And once or twice a year, I run into him, and he's always gives me a big hug. And I talk to his mother 2-3 times a month. So the relationship is still there. If you smell what Willie Apter is cooking.
Can you do Stu Hart?
Stu Hart. Stu Hart was great. When I used to call and ask Stu for results of the matches up in Calgary, Stu would, it would take an hour for a 5-minute call. Stu, I'd say, Stu, this is Bill Apter, and Stu would go, well, you know, Bill, where are you calling from? I said, Long Island. Well, in Long Island, and he'd go on like this for an hour before we were able to get to the story. But he was great. He was great. I loved him very much.
Dave Schultz is here today, and we did an extended career interview with him last night.
He's been on my podcast twice in the past 2 weeks, and he's one of the greatest storytellers I've ever met. Unfortunately, people only tie him to that incident where he bitch slapped John Stossel. But he was a great wrestler, great character, and he is who he is.
Were you there that night?
No, I was not.
No, okay. So for anyone that wants to listen to your podcast or follow you on social media,
it's a video podcast. No one does that. If you go to my Facebook page, Bill Apter, or follow me on Twitter at Apter1Wrestling, that's the number 1, not the word, every Thursday night at 6:45 p.m. Eastern Time, I post a link to my video podcast. I'm on video, my guests are on audio, and it's every week, 7 p.m. It's the Bill Apter Video Magazine podcast. We have guests, hot seat type of interviews. We do rankings. We do the wrestler of the week. It's just like the old magazines.
Very cool. Well, thanks a lot for speaking with us.
Thank you, Hannibal TV. And there's only one thing left to say. I'll see you at the matches.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our